All right, welcome back to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm here with Matty B and Rick David. Once again, we're going to go ahead. We've got a good show for you guys. Jeff's out. He's back on second shift. You can check him out on Spaces or Laces. Every Thursday or so, we're going to put that out. I do apologize. I helped him do some video stuff last week for the show. We experienced a ton of lag. I'm assuming it was on Skype's end because this show recorded well last Tuesday. And so it took us an extra day to get that out. But you can look back for him. He'll be putting that out, hopefully on time, this Thursday. And it's a big week. We're going to start with the new, before I get into football, because I know that's all I'm amped up. I want to talk about it. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to start a new segment called High Tempo, where we run in, go around the horn, just talk about a recent sports thing that you saw, whatever. So each person will get a chance to talk, kind of what we normally do, but without sort of like the prepared topic that everyone talks about. Mine this week was the big fight, McGregor, Mayweather. I'll have to say that I wasn't disappointed with the fight. It kind of went exactly how I expected it to go. McGregor came out, he had the length, he had the weight on him. Got some good punches in. A lot of people weren't expecting him to do anything. I expected him to have a decent fight or at least be prepared. He tired out very, very easy near the end. I think it was about the 6th round. I would say it was about a toss-up through the late rounds. Mayweather started hammering him, which I expected because Mayweather's a great fighter. And it was awesome to see him actually finally go on the offensive. Too many times I've watched his fights and they're frustrating, because he never really does that because he doesn't have to. But he knew that McGregor got some punches in, and he went on, turned it on, and it was actually one of the most exciting boxing matches I've seen in quite a while. I was disappointed in McGregor. I thought he'd be in better shape. I was disappointed that the ref stopped it. I've heard both sides of it. I've heard the regular talking heads say, oh, that's the right play. He could get hurt. But I'm in the mindset where boxing is a sport where I think your corner should call it, or you should at least be knocked down first, because he was close to getting him off his feet. It didn't look like Mayweather had the power to knock him out. That's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's old. He's 40 years old, maybe even older than that. I don't know, but he didn't have the power. I would have liked to see it go the rest of the way, because at that point, McGregor was tired. They were both just out there swinging. Mayweather was landing a lot, and it was getting pretty exciting. And out of the blue, they just stopped it. But that's my topic for this week. We'll go ahead around. Matt, you can go ahead and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, before I get started, I just wanted to tell you, if you really enjoyed that fight, you can also watch Rocky 1 and get the same basic plot lines. I just felt like they set it up so that they could have the sequel later on if they really want to go and have that. With cutting it short, with having two guys just slugging it out and standing there taking it, with all the media hype beforehand, it was straight. It was almost like, felt like verbatim the script from Rocky 1 and 2.
I'll tell you, going in, that was my expectation. I just wanted McGregor to go the distance, like it was Rocky 1. And it kind of did have that Rocky vibe. To me, it was more like when he fought Hulk Hogan. You're just like, wow, these two different guys are just going at it. And it was kind of more intense than you expected. And then all of a sudden, they just ended it because it was like an exhibition. Because if you remember that one, like Hulk Hogan's kicking the shit out of Rocky. And then he's just like, good match, kid. That's what the boxing match was to me at the end. They're just like, all right, that's it. Thanks for coming out, guys. Thanks for paying. Hopefully you got what you wanted, just some jabs back and forth. So.
But the thing that really caught my attention was Matt Stafford just signed a new contract, making him one of the 5 highest paid players in the NFL at $27 million. Did Detroit not have anything else better to spend their money on? Like maybe a wide receiver, a running back, some other weapons to kind of help move the ball in the end zone. So they have Matt Stafford paid, but no one to protect him, no one to get the ball to, just an average group of people as a supporting cast. So throwing spaghetti off the wall to see what sticks.
Rick, what's your topic for the week?
My topic will be in Major League Baseball. They moved the series of Houston versus the Texas Rangers. They moved it to Tropicana Field, which is the home of the Tampa Bay Rays. So because of the problems that are happening in Houston. All prayers and well wishes go out to the people of Houston that are dealing with these problems. They moved that series. One thing that seems to be the common thing that I keep hearing anymore is corporate greed comes out. They wanted to do a switch series at first, and it was reported by various sources that they wanted to take this game and move it to Arlington, so home of the Texas Rangers. But Rangers said no because of ticket sales and money and everything along those lines. Major League Baseball steps in and says, hey, Tropicana's not being used. Rays are on the road right now, so you're going to go play there, and asking people to make donations and everything like that so they could play this series and get it done. So sad that corporate greed plays effect once again in sports. But that's what's being reported. So they moved it there. So hopefully the series gets played. They're in a dome, so that should be good enough to get played. So and get this series done. So all well wishes to the people of Houston.
Yeah, and I second that because that's a big game changer. And normally those fall during college football. I don't know if anything week 1 is going to be moved. I know Michigan's traveling to Dallas. I think that's where the game is, in Jerry World. But I haven't heard anything in regards to that being affected by the hurricane. I did see in another positive note that I think Kansas State is giving a portion of their door proceeds for this weekend's football game to hurricane relief funds. So very cool move by Bill Snyder. I know he's been there for a while and quite successful as a head coach of Kansas State. So I figure I'd give him a shout out there. Now, going around to football. Jeff couldn't be on the podcast this week, so I have some of his notes here that I'll go through as we're talking. He seemed to be pretty high on Mitch Trubisky, who, whenever he was drafted, I thought was an awful pick by the Bears. His notes said he was pretty poised and looked like he could become a very valuable starting quarterback for the Bears. So I know Bears fans out there, it's rough. You're looking at that draft they had. We pretty much ripped it to shreds, and maybe they'll make a few choices that pay off, because that's a franchise that has been in a weird spot ever since they lost that Super Bowl. They haven't really had enough pieces to make a run, and they're kind of second fiddle to the Packers. But this week, we're going to go ahead and talk NFL playoff predictions. I'm going to have some graphics. I'm going to start sending more stuff out social media-wise. We don't have anything to actually show you on the show this week. But basically, we went ahead, picked our wild card division leaders. We'll be putting up our graphic just like every other sports outlet does, so you can see who made their picks and what they think is going to happen. I personally think there could be a rematch in the championship games. In the AFC, you really have the Patriots, I've talked about it before, as the number 1 team, and then the Steelers kind of as the clear number 2. That's with the healthy Ben Roethlisberger. If he goes down, there might be a shakeup, but I really don't see any other team that could compete for one of those 2 spots, and I really think the way the Steelers' defense has been shredded in the secondary, I don't see anything stopping Tom Brady from getting back to the Super Bowl this year. And on the other side of that, I know the Steelers picked up a tight end this week, or today, maybe even McDonald from the 49ers. I think they should be trying to pick up some other secondary pieces. Jeff said he hoped to see them go after Revis as a free agent. I mean, maybe, but this late in the game, it's tough to get someone who's retired into shape to pick that up. But we'll go ahead and start focusing on the AFC. I think that's how the playoffs are going to figure out. Wild cards and stuff. I have the Steelers winning the North. I don't think the wild card is going to come from the North here. But just going around the rest of the AFC, let me see. I'll bring up my notes and Jeff's in a second. But what I'm looking at is Steelers, the Patriots in the East. Then we have, Jeff has the same, the Raiders. I think the Raiders could be a team to compete, but I think they're still a year away. Plus, it depends on how far Derek Carr goes ahead and recovers. Jeff has the Titans in the, I guess that's considered the South. And I agree with that. They could win. I could have the Texans. I have the Texans and the Chiefs filling in the last two playoff spots. Jeff has the Ravens in his last spot. Like I said, I don't think the North is going to get two this year. Too many unknowns. I don't think Flacco's healthy, and I just think the South is going to be more competitive. My Titans pick depends on Mariota. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? If not, I just think the Texans defense, if they can get some semblance of quarterback play, and I'm assuming Deshaun Watson jumps in, and that's what gets them to that wild card spot. But I'll quit talking. We can go ahead, go around. Matt, you can kick it off. What do you think is going to happen in the AFC this year?
Well, I think when you look at the AFC picture, to me, the team that really did the most to help their situation was the Raiders. They went out and they picked up Marshawn Lynch and letting Latavius Murray go. I think they upgraded their running back position, getting Derek Carr back and signing him to his big contract, locked him into place for a long time. I think they have the outside receivers in Crabtree and Cooper. All the pieces are there for them to make a legitimate run now. And the bottom line with the Raiders is that whereas last year they had to be a little bit more pass focused, teams have to respect that running game with Marshawn Lynch and that interior power running game that they have. I think they're just young enough on defense that they might be able to turn some heads this year. They really play a physical style defense, and that speed that they have coming off the edge really, I think, could be a factor that pushes them into that next step, because I think up until the injury, they were definitely a team that was pretty scary with the way that they were moving the football. And it just so happened that after they had the injuries at quarterback, it really hurt them. So to me, I think the Raiders have a legitimate shot at even upsetting New England in the AFC Championship game. I think with some of the other things, I like the Texans to win out in that AFC South. I think that they have a good – with seeing more from the preseason games, I think he may not be the day one – they may not name him day one starter, but I think Watson's going to end up coming in at some point, and with his ability to run after the protection breaks down or after the routes develop, he showed it in some of the other preseason games. I think that's definitely something that would work well for them. And the other defenses in that division aren't exactly world beaters with the Colts, with the Titans. That I think that they could definitely make a serious push, considering that barring J.J. Watt staying healthy and Clowney staying healthy and some of those other guys. As far as Pittsburgh, though, I got to say the thing that I think could hold them back is, like what you said, Roethlisberger's health. It's always been the trend where they make the playoffs, and I just get that feeling like they're just happy enough to be there. You don't see that sense of urgency, and I don't know if that's because of the style of coaching that Tomlin brings, where he's just kind of laid back. And it's like, well, we win the games that we're supposed to. We make the playoffs, which is the standard that the franchise has set. And then it's like, once we get there, there's no sense to be efficient, do the things that you need to do to take that next step and get to another Super Bowl, another deep run. So I think that may end up hurting them in the long run.
The thing I noticed in the preseason game I watched is Ben took a lot of big hits, and he wasn't even in there for most of the game. So the fact that he's getting hit from the blind side, which I assume he's playing with the first team line, I didn't check too much into it, just casually watching that before the fight on Saturday. That was concerning. And the concern with the secondary, just, I don't know. I just think that combination, yeah, they could be passed by the Raiders, but I want to see how Carr plays once he starts to get hit and everything else. But Rick, what do you think on the AFC this year?
I think a lot of the same exact things that you guys have already said. Patriots win their division, Steelers win theirs. I took Texans over Titans to win that. But I don't see the second wild card coming out of there. I see them all coming out of the West, which would be Raiders win the division, then Chiefs and Broncos pull out the wild card. So a little bit different on that side. But with the Patriots still being one overall, and I think they're going to run right through it. I think they'll have an easier track to get through because they'll have that bye in the first time. Then they're probably going to play, probably the worst of the four, the home teams that play which could probably be, the Texans away. If the wild card team doesn't accept, pull the upset. So I actually do have the Chiefs pulling the upset against the Texans because I think they're a younger team and they're going to be better years down the road. So, but the one thing that I did a little bit different than everybody, I put the Raiders at the number 3 spot. And that was set them up for that game against the Steelers. So I really think this is the wild card of the whole entire AFC is the Raiders, because the Raiders could have been better last year if they had Carr, but Carr was injured, or even a Matt McGloin who was injured too. So at least they would have had a scale back playbook, but not as much scale back because McGloin's been there for a couple of years. So I still see it being the Patriots. I don't see how they got worse this offseason. I think they got better because they have Cooks now. So even though they lost Edelman, they still have Amendola there, who's like the mini-me version of him. So don't see how the Patriots got worse, but I think it's still there. It's the Patriots AFC to blow, not anybody else's to win. If the Patriots blow it, then somebody's got a chance. But if they don't blow it, it should be theirs.
Yeah, just a few more notes. Matt, you mentioned Latavius Murray. I actually saw that he's 4th on the Vikings depth chart right now, which shows you that, maybe he's not the weapon that could move the Raiders' offense like I had previously thought. And maybe you're right. They do bring in a running back that can get them some positive yards and get their offense clicking. They could even be more dangerous this year. My thoughts on the Broncos, I just don't see enough from their offense. It seems like they have a great defense, but unless Peyton Manning's walking through the door to just command the offense, I just don't see them. They're still starting, Trevor Siemian? I just don't see them making that jump. I think the Chiefs are good for a playoff win. That's an Andy Reid special. You win one, you lose one. You get right back out. So he does just enough to get to that spot, and the team's built for that. That's why I have them in my wild card. Do I think they're going to beat the Raiders? Nah. But do I think he's going to do just enough to get in the playoffs, maybe squeak a win out, and everyone pats him on the back? Eventually, I wonder how long the Chiefs are going to keep up with that, because I know it wore on the Eagles after a while because they were in the playoffs for what seemed like a decade straight with him. I don't know how long he was actually there. But eventually that wears thin whenever it's like, are we going to get to that second spot or not? But I'm going to rotate here into the NFC. NFC was a little bit more, I think what I have a repeat again in the NFC Championship game. Packers and Falcons. I think the Falcons, do they go back to the Super Bowl? I don't know. I'm leaning towards, I just hate picking the Packers. Jeff picked the Packers in the Super Bowl. Me and him had a little bit of disagreement. I'll leave my pick for later on that, but I have Falcons coming from the South, Packers coming from the North. I also have, Seahawks coming from the West, and I have the I have the Cowboys coming from the East. I have the Eagles and the, which team did I leave out here? Because I don't have mine numbered in order. The Cardinals. Cardinals are my other wild card. Jeff has the Cardinals winning the West with the Seahawks as the wild card, and he has the Giants in the East with the Cowboys as the 6th spot. I think the Eagles, what I've seen in preseason, and these differ a little bit from when we did the preview, I had to move my picks a little bit. I think the Eagles have something on offense, and I think they're finally going to be able to get over that hump. With the Cowboys, I just think they're going to sneak in. I don't know. This Ezekiel Elliott thing seems like it's going to mess up the locker room for me. The one team that I think could make the jump that Jeffrey's really high on, he wants the Cardinals to be in that NFC Championship game. I don't think they will. If anyone bumps out the Packers or the Falcons, I think it's going to be the Seahawks, and that's on the strength of Pete Carroll's head coaching. Do they have the weapons? Not so much anymore on offense, but a strong defense will get you far. But again, I'm thinking, and I know it's rare, but as I look for these teams to make different picks in my AFC NFC Championship game, I think it's going to be a repeat. And I think the Packers will get it done this year. coming back to that pick, just because I think the way they were embarrassed by the Falcons, that's not going to happen 2 years in a row. So, Matt, what do you think about the NFC? We'll go in the same order.
Well, looking at the Cardinals in the NFC Championship game, if they make it there, it's because the rest of the division says respect your elders, because I don't see it happening. I think it's the Falcons. From what I've seen, I think that maybe there was a little bit of cockiness with how they were taking it to New England in the first half of the Super Bowl. I saw Sports Illustrated had a thing about how the New England has a dynasty and how anyone can keep up with them. Bottom line is, if the Falcons convert and just keep their foot on the gas, they blow New England out of the water, and we're not even having this discussion about how super the Patriots are. Because for the first half of that Super Bowl, Atlanta made them look very vulnerable, and I think that really they're the team to be coming out of the NFC. Now, some of the other teams that I think are in that running, I agree with as far as Philly. I didn't realize how many Florida State guys they have. I may have to follow them a little bit closer now that they picked up Ronald Darby as well. And that Buffalo trade, just picking up, winning play. You pick up winning players from winning programs. It's proven. It works. So, but I also like Minnesota now at this point, because Big Dalvin Cook, good rookie draft pick there that they picked up. I think he'll be a good bell carrier for him this year, and I think that Minnesota has what it takes to get over the hump. So I think that they're going to make a little bit of noise this year in the playoffs, maybe win a couple games, but I just don't think that they have the weapons nearly to deal with what Atlanta's bringing to the table.
With that Atlanta thing, Matt Ryan looks so good in the preseason. It's just hard to beat. And I think that's where you're going to get into a shootout with Aaron Rodgers again. Most quarterbacks come out on top. I agree with you. They looked really good. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were the team to make the jump. Your Florida State thing, I already told you during our fantasy football draft that Florida State guys don't make good pros. So maybe I'll have to go back on my Eagles pick. Thanks for pointing that out, that they had a lot of Florida State guys on their team. But
Devontae Freeman looked pretty darn good running for the Falcons. Let me just tell you, winners win.
Except when they don't in the Super Bowl. Rick, what do you think for the NFC?
I had the same exact divisional champions as you did, Rich. Pretty much. And my wild card's a little bit different. I took the Bucks and the Giants, so a little bit different there, but I really don't have either one of those two teams winning. I think the four teams, Cowboys, Seahawks, Falcons, and Packers, are your class. They're in their own tier right now. So I figured I didn't want to pick the teams that went to the Super Bowl last year. I thought if there was one team that had a chance to differ either from the Falcons or the Pats, it would be the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys' offense is very good. It's going to be one that's kind of going to be tough at different times of the year. And I think Ezekiel Elliott, from what I'm reading, is going to appeal his suspension, I think, on Thursday. So if he appeals it and wins, he could get it decreased, which will only help their chances. I'm looking at you. You're saying no. Who knows?
They're not. They're not going to repeal that. I don't think they don't throw down a 4-game sentence. I mean, maybe they reduce it 2 games.
6.
Is it 6 games?
It was 6. So they could reduce it to a 4.
Yeah, I don't think they get rid of it totally.
No, I don't think they'll get rid of it. I think it's going to decrease to some other number, whether it be 2 to 5.
I could see that, yeah.
Somewhere in that range it'll be, and then that'll help them out. So I think that's where I'm having the Cowboys play the Patriots, with Patriots winning here. So, but I think the Cowboys are going to beat, and I figure you can't go to Seattle and win. So I think they're going to be, out of the 4 division winners, they're going to hit the number 4 spot, which will put them in a line with the Falcons probably. And Seattle will have to go to Atlanta. I don't see them winning there. So I think that's going to be a little bit different that way. And I think the Packers have a good chance too, because their division, outside the Vikings, they should easily have some, easy wins. The Bears look, I don't know what the hell the Bears are doing. I think those are going to be 2 easy wins for them. I think they have some easier teams that they're going to play during the year that are going to help run up their wins in a way.
Yeah, now I know Matt mentioned it during our high tempo segment, But the Lions, they signed Matt Stafford for a long-term contract. A lot of people were surprised that they did that based on how well Jake Rudock played in the preseason. I saw a lot of mixed things stating if they were going to use Stafford as trade bait and kind of use that as a rebuilding step. They have a solid, he's not a rookie anymore, but second or third year in the league now, that he could come in and be someone they build around. It seems clear that Stafford is not going to lead them any further than the playoffs. But just a touch on that, do you guys think, and we'll start with you this time, Rick, do you think the Lions have any chance at taking one of the wild card spots?
No, not at all, because what weapons do they have on offense? I mean, that's what really lacks it. I mean, Kelvin Johnson's not going to walk out there, and neither is Barry Sanders for the Lions. I mean, their weapons are not there. I mean, I don't see it happening. I don't think they have enough weapons to get by teams like the Falcons, Packers. These teams are loaded with different options. The Lions are not. I mean, they have some things that benefit them. They play in the same field. They're inside of a dome, and then here's what happens. You got to go play Minnesota, play Green Bay. You got to go outside to go play them in the freezing cold weather. Have fun with that, I mean, they play in a different climate in there for their home games to away games. And I think it's something that benefits the Packers a little bit more because they play in November and December, where the Lions are only practicing in weathers like that, where they're playing games. So I don't see the Lions winning. I don't think they have enough players around them to make them good. And I think they're going to hurt themselves with this signing because their limit's going after a good free agent next year or something out there. There's a running back or a big-time wide receiver. Where's your money? And there's no way he's a top 5 player in the league. There are at least 20 players that come to the top of my head that are top 5 players that deserve top 5 money, not Matthew Stafford.
Matt, what do you think?
Well, I think it makes sense for Detroit to pay Stafford because they're such a premium. You saw what happened last year with Derek Carr going down. You see what's happening in Miami, the scramble that they had to do when Tannehill went down. There's not a lot of good quarterback prospects. So if you have one, it makes sense to lock him up. I think maybe with how they're playing in the dome, maybe having that home field advantage, maybe that does do something for them. If they can come out in the early part of the season and win some games and start to develop and build that home atmosphere, you can maybe pull some of those bandwagon people or people that are on the fringe that don't have anything else better to do because they're in Detroit to come out on Sundays and support the Lions. Maybe they can get something built there, but they really have to. I think for them to really turn it on, they would have to hit it in the early part of the year. I think if they wait and they have a late season push, they're not going to get the fan support. And it's going to be a little bit tougher for them to build, that positive atmosphere to make them want to play a little bit harder. So, like I said earlier, I think they're missing some weapons, but in the long run, by having at least that piece in place, it can pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up was I know they made the playoffs last year. I believe they were one and done. And if they go back into playoffs, I believe that's what's going to happen again. A one and done type year. And after a while, it's kind of the same thing I said with Andy Reid. Do the fans become anxious? Are they going to be mad with this signing when, like I said, a lot of the fans that I talked to were hoping that possibly they used him as trade bait or something to build around Rudock, which would give them time to pull in some weapons and maybe fall on the tail end of Aaron Rodgers' career and put the Lions in a spot, kind of like the Bears are right now with Mitch Trubisky. And if he can keep it up, I don't know, it just seems like the Lions are kind of in no man's land for the Northern team. And I don't know how much farther that's going to go. But we'll go around the horn. I think the Patriots probably repeat. And I have a feeling, I know Tom Brady said he's not going to retire, but I feel like if he wins another Super Bowl, there's a chance he might retire and go out on top. What are your guys' final predictions? Go ahead, Rick.
Patriots win again, and I will say it. If they win, Brady retires. So I think he'll go out, kind of Jerome Bettis style. Kind of announce it like a week or two after the season and says, I retire. He has nothing to prove. He has a Hall of Fame career in front of him. You can talk about the Deflategate. I think they're already past that and everything. So I think he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. So I'm going to say Patriots win, Brady retires, and get ready in a couple of years to put him in the Hall of Fame.
Matt, what do you think?
Dirty Birds, baby. Atlanta, I don't think that anyone can touch them with what they're bringing. They keep coming on all cylinders like they have been. I think they're going to pick up where they left off last year, and it's going to be Atlanta.
And just to go around, Jeff actually has the Packers winning. He's high on Aaron Rodgers. He said he'd rather see the Cardinals make it just for Larry Fitzgerald, but looking at it, he can't pick against the Packers over the Patriots, is what he said. So that's it for our NFL playoff predictions. We're waiting now. Finally, preseason's about over. Hopefully everyone stays healthy around the league and we can get into some big action. Next week, we'll be talking a little bit of the pregame for the Browns, who are a young and hungry team. They look pretty aggressive out there in preseason. So hopefully the Steelers can get it done, and we'll be talking a lot about some of the other primetime Week 1 matchups. But for now, we're going to switch to college football. And before we get into, I hate how ESPN and all the other major outlets say that college football kicks off on Thursday, because it already kicked off last Saturday. I caught about 3 of the 4 games I think I watched a good bit of. BYU came out, put a hurting on, Portland State? Maybe I did catch all 4 games. Or maybe there was more than 4 and I only caught 4. I don't know, whatever. But Oregon State got destroyed by Colorado State, I think. I watched that game and I was in disbelief because the crazy thing is their coach, Gary Anderson, left Wisconsin. He left with Wisconsin to go to Oregon State to get beat like a dog by Colorado State, which is just embarrassing. And that was one of the craziest moves I've ever heard. And everyone said it was probably my sources said that it was probably due to Barry Alvarez. They weren't hitting it off. And he thinks Barry kind of forced them. But just to get up and leave, to go take, I don't know, it might have been more pay, it might have been less pay, I don't know, but he's about to get run out of town. And if anyone doesn't remember, it was a weird triangle move where Oregon State coach Mike Riley went to Nebraska. And then Wisconsin's coach went to Oregon State. It was like a weird, I guess it's not a triangle. I don't know. I'm not too good with my math. But they had Paul Chryst leave Pitt to go to Wisconsin and to fill in, and he's been awesome. I mean, Wisconsin already has the base put right in. Everything is set in stone. You know you're going to have a power team. You pretty much own in-state recruiting. It's the same thing with basketball. If you run the same offense that their high school kids run, you can just pull anyone in, and you're going to kind of compete. And for him just to leave to Oregon State, I made me laugh while I watched that game. So that was a fun game. I actually watched South Florida, USF. And at first I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Charlie Strong is going to be run out of town so fast because they were down, was it 10-0, 14-0 at the end of the first quarter? And as a USF team that I saw a lot of people picking to make the postseason games, but they turned it around and came out strong in the second half. And, I mean, maybe it was just the first game jitters. I guess they flew all the way to San Diego State is who they played. So didn't get off to a good start. I was worried there for Charlie Strong because he had a lot of hype this season, saying some things at Texas were out of his control. And I think he'll do well there. They seem to have a lot of athletes, and I know, are they in the AAC or whatever? They used to be in the Big East, but it's not what it used to be. And the last game I watched, Stanford destroyed Rice. They could do whatever they wanted to do on them. And it was scary, but again, it's Rice. So I don't know how much power they're going to have when they get into the Pac-12. But we'll go around. If you guys didn't watch the games, just let me know. But Matt, did you watch any of the games? Do you have any thoughts?
I saw a little bit of. I'm trying to think of which one it even was. It might have been the Colorado State game. Actually, one of the things that I really like that ESPN's doing right now is the high school showcases, because they have so many really good teams out there that I like that they're going cross borders. I actually watched a good bit of the Pine Richland game where they whipped up on some team from Ohio, and the quarterback just looked like he could do whatever he wanted, commit to Notre Dame, and you can see why he's getting the hype that he has, because he was running, he was throwing, he was doing just about anything that he wanted to do out there. And I think that was almost as good as some of these, who wants to watch Stanford Schlack Rice? I kind of like some of these games where you're seeing some of these top 300 recruits and being able to see, why are they getting the hype that they are.
Rick, what do you think? Did you watch any of the games?
I did not watch any of the games, but I will say this in South Florida's behalf. They did still win by a decisive margin. So they won by a total of 20 points. And they went on the road to the West Coast to begin the year. But I think one thing that's going to help them out is that their schedule is going to a little bit benefit for them. I'm trying to think. They play Stony Brook this week, so they're taking on a big team there, and so that should be an easier win. And they're at home, not on the road. They're at home, so at least that should help out them. And I think the Texas job is probably one of the toughest football jobs to have too. So I think Charlie Strong I think he's going to be better than he's in a new place, because I don't think the Texas alumni base and the fan base are going to be on him as much when he has 2 losses. They're not going to matter as much playing there for Southern Florida as it did for Texas. So I think it's just a tough place to coach. So I don't know. And there's other options in the state of Texas compared to Wisconsin. There's other schools. There's Texas Tech, TCU. There's other schools. It's not just Wisconsin. So I think he has a tough job recruiting too against other schools that know how to recruit too.
Yeah. Now, with that, I think the rest of the games kick off Thursday, and there's a lot of hype on basically there's 3 ranked matchups this weekend. The big one, which they're talking about, I forget, they used some awkward wording about like it's the first time a number 1 has ever played a 3 or greater or something weird on their commercial. I heard it like 4 times this weekend. It was like, who wrote that? But Florida State is playing Alabama in the highest ranked matchup. Then you have Florida and Michigan. I mentioned it earlier in the show, playing at a neutral site is it A&T Stadium? I don't know. People call it Jerry's World, but it's a Cowboy Stadium. I think it's pretty much in Dallas. And then the third matchup, the West Virginia Mountaineers against Virginia Tech, and I think that's a Sunday night game.
It's a Sunday night.
What's the big Monday night matchup? Because obviously I don't know. Do you guys know? Because in
Tennessee, Georgia Tech.
Tennessee, Georgia Tech.
Tennessee's a 25, Georgia Tech not ranked.
All right, so that's not too bad. That's actually a unique Southern matchup. They used to both be in. Didn't Georgia Tech used to be in the SEC? I think so. So probably some old rivalries there. Not a ranked matchup. I'm surprised they didn't put the Virginia Tech West Virginia matchup, but I think that game is at FedEx Field, the Redskins Stadium. So that's a neutral site game as well, as is the Florida State Alabama game, right, Matt? That one's in.
Yeah, that's in Atlanta, but I'm wondering if the stadium's going to be built in time. They're saying that the dome covering isn't going to be ready yet, so they'll have to be playing that open air.
Oh, so wait, are they renovating it? I thought that was always a dome.
Well, with the construction that's being built on it, they're still like trying to get it scrambled to get it finished.
That's interesting. I did hear too. This might just be a little Southern talk that Atlanta put a Chick-fil-A that's closed on Sundays in their stadium.
That is true. It made national news on different websites, like one of their main stories. I don't get it either.
I think they said,
why pay the money?
Well, I think they said altogether, based on games, maybe like shared football games or whatever, it could be open 3 times this year or something, 3 or 4 times, which just seems like an incredible waste. If they are renovating roofs and building restaurants, you'd think they'd get someone else in there. And I understand, and I actually applaud them for standing by their morals. If they're not open on Sundays, they're not open on Sundays. Who approached them to say, hey, you want to put one in here when we play our games on Sunday? That doesn't make any sense to me. But three...
Well, see, those playoff games are on the weekend. Maybe they get the Saturday playoff games.
Maybe. That's what they're hoping for, that one day of the year. They have to bring in employees that are never there because, like, what would you do? Yeah, we're going to hire. This isn't a seasonal position. It's a maybe position. Keep your Saturdays in January open. We're most likely going to get a bye because we have an awesome team. But it will be a home game. That's for sure. So maybe they do get that coveted. So if they're going to have a team that's going to get one of the top 2 seeds most likely and have a bye. So realistically, they only play Saturdays that first weekend. They have a chance for one Saturday playoff game. I know maybe this year's maybe they're hoping in a few years their team gets a little bit worse and they can squeeze 2 Saturday playoff games out of them. But I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. But
didn't they have a bowl game last year there, though?
Don't they have the SEC championship game, right?
Yeah, that's there.
I think that's counted in one of the 3 or 4 times they're going to use it.
Okay.
The rest of them are.
But isn't that the Georgia Dome? This is the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium that's being built in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Are they moving everything into that one?
It's the $1.5 billion replacement. Yeah, and that's where the game is supposed to be played, but that's where the roof isn't done with construction yet. They're trying to get that finished. So the replacement's $1.5 billion that they're trying to get it built in time for this game.
Well, first off, that's crazy, and I hope the taxpayers aren't paying that because Atlanta has problems with roads. They don't need to be paying for a brand new $1 billion stadium.
Oh, they definitely are paying for it. Believe it. Believe it, they're paying for it.
Well, they just moved the Atlanta Braves stadium. They need to work on
getting that out of town.
Yeah, they need to get some better interstate highways there. It's always a gridlock.
Didn't they blow up the stadium they had for the Olympics too?
Rick, that's a poor joke. That's in poor taste.
No, but they imploded that stadium. That stadium doesn't exist. Oh, I know what you're saying. Well, that stadium doesn't exist anymore. What would be the old Atlanta Braves home? That got torn down because I think that's where they put the Mercedes Stadium at. Was in that spot.
Hey, Matt, weren't you there with me? We went to Bobby Cox's last game. They gave us a poster, right?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, we were there. That was I don't know. That wasn't the last game at that stadium, but we were there for Bobby Cox's last game on a random one-off topic there. But that's interesting. No, that's crazy that they're going to do that. And you would think with such a high-profile matchup that everyone's talking about that they would have the stadium figured out. So Atlanta's home preseason games, are they playing in the old stadium? Do you know?
I have no idea.
I don't know. So, well, we'll save that matchup for last. We'll start with the West Virginia Tech one. Jeff put out some polls. Of course, this is a game he's interested in because he lives in West Virginia, right in Morgantown. And he actually didn't put a poll on this game. We tried to actually get a Virginia Tech guy that was talking trash on us on Twitter to come onto the show. But of course, once you reach out to someone, they quit talking trash and go into hiding. So we didn't get a good Virginia Tech perspective. Jeff seems to think that West Virginia is going to run away with this one. I kind of like Virginia Tech's coach. But, I mean, West Virginia is in a spot with Dana Holgorsen where they need to win. And they need to do it relatively soon. This is a year for them to step up. Because if not, if Tom Herman's the real deal, and they have a brand new coach at Oklahoma, so they basically have 2 new coaches. Because remember, Stoops retired. Which I'm still skeptical on because it was such a weird timing. But he retired before this year. So West Virginia, this is their time if they're going to win the Big 12. And the same goes to Kansas State and TCU. If they want to step up, now is the time when the big 2 programs in their conference have new head coaches that they have to do it. And I just don't know if they have enough to get it done in the conference. But I do think West Virginia is going to come out on top this time just because Virginia Tech still hasn't been able to find a solid quarterback for the last 8 to 10 years. But we'll go ahead. Matt, you can continue. What do you think is going to happen in this Virginia Tech-West Virginia game?
I really like Virginia Tech's defensive coordinator, Bud Foster. I thought he does a really good job of coordinating against some of these spread offenses. He did a great job shutting down Ohio State a couple years ago, and Ohio State had a much higher rated players and talent, and he was able to out X and O them. I was seeing some of the hype that they were saying about how it's a rivalry reborn. To me, I kind of think that the Pitt West Virginia backyard brawl should be, a game that they should be trying to get back together, not worrying about West Virginia. Maybe there is a lot more history that I don't know, but I think that Pitt West Virginia rivalry definitely was a better, head-to-head matchup, and the game and the two stadiums are close, relatively close geographically together. To me, that one makes more sense, but I got to go with Virginia Tech in this one.
Rick, what are your thoughts?
Right now, the odds makers out of Vegas are giving the game to Virginia Tech by 4 points. My theory is maybe it's because it's closer. Maybe more Virginia Tech fans will show up than West Virginia fans because in distance, the campus to campus, and everything. So this is the first time these two teams have met since 2005. So pretty much new coaches and everything since then for both teams and everything. I agree with you, Rich. This is the time for West Virginia to, this is their time to do it. If not, I don't know if this coaching staff comes back or not. So they've had good seasons, but nothing spectacular. So, and I find it funny that you mentioned Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops is laying there in the weeds. He's kind of like Urban Meyer. He's taken the year off. Urban Meyer went to, to broadcasting. I'm not sure what Bob Stoops is doing this year. But if West Virginia, who knows, Bob Stoops could pop into one of these coaching positions, or you may hear his name floated around for different jobs of coaches if teams don't pan out. And this West Virginia team is still a good team, but you got to win these games. And this is like a must-win here because if you don't win, you're out of top 25. Either one of these two teams is probably out. So you got to win to stay in.
Yeah. To your point, on the Virginia Tech defense, Matt, it's pretty much strength on strength. West Virginia offense against that Virginia Tech defense, and then pretty much weakness on weakness there. I just don't, I think West Virginia is going to come out on top because they have to, and I think they're going to get beat up in the Big 12, and I honestly think the Big 12 is going to be left out again. Now, for your point, Rick, on Bob Stoops sitting around waiting, I have heard that there's a possibility that Iowa's making a push for him. He is an Iowa grad. He played there. I believe all his brothers played there. And Kirk Ferentz, I'm not sure when his contract is up, but there is a chance that he could make that push. And, the Big Ten West is relatively wide open these days, with only Wisconsin seemingly winning it every year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bob Stoops came back to coaching, if he came back to coach his alma mater. I'm not sure actually how old he is, though. He might be retired for good. On to the next matchup, Michigan and Florida. Now, I'm a Michigan guy, and you sleep through this. Wow. Because
Are you kidding? They had that fraud scandal. You're just like ESPN trying to make this into a game when it should just be a complete beatdown.
Well, I'll tell you, actually, when I was researching this, I wanted to get a feel for who people picked. Vegas has Michigan. Most of the other national media is picking Florida on the basis that Michigan only has one returning starter. And they're saying that Florida's returning all 5 of their offensive linemen. I think that scandal knocked out their starting receiver and a couple backups. That's what I was reading. So a lot of people were picking Florida, which surprised me because the blue chip ratio came out last week, which measures how many blue chip athletes are on each roster in a percentage basis, and Florida fell to 37% overall, which is shocking to me. That's telling me McElwain's not getting it done on the recruiting front. If he's not getting it done on the recruiting front, he's never going to beat Florida State. And Harbaugh has Michigan. So basically the reason why the national pundits are picking Florida is due to all of Michigan's blue chip recruits are basically freshmen and sophomores and one returning starter. I still like I mean, Don Brown, the Michigan defensive coordinator, he was shutting everyone down at Boston College. You just don't have a great defense at Boston College. So he has to know what he's doing. He has a lot of young, hungry talent. And again, it's going to be pretty much, it's going to be strength on weakness. I would imagine both defenses are the strength in this game. Offenses are going to be the weakness. There's quarterback battles at both schools. I don't know. We ran a poll. 100%, which is like a handful of people, picked Michigan to win. They're playing in weird color uniforms, which I'm not high on. Michigan is wearing maize for some reason, and Florida's wearing blue. I would have liked to see that reverse with Florida wearing the orange. I think that would have been cool. Is that some more prominent in their color? I mean, Michigan, our cheers go blue for Christ's sakes. So why are we wearing these bright maize uniforms? And actually, Rick, that jersey link you sent me, they were selling those before this game was announced. Because I turned around and told some people, I was like, Michigan's selling these maize jerseys. It doesn't make sense that these are going to be hitting the market soon. And that very 2 days later, they announced that it was going to be a maize out for the color game. So thanks for that. That gave me a little bit of heads up on that. So I knew it wasn't a fake link getting sent around if they're going to sell me a Desmond Howard bright maize jersey. So I still think Michigan's going to win just on the strength of coaching. Everyone else seems to think Florida's in it. I didn't think they would even be close, to be honest. But maybe it's going to be closer than what I think just on the... I don't know. If you return a bunch of starters that weren't that good to begin with, I mean, it's against a freshman team. And maybe the big travel, they are traveling pretty far. It's a neutral site game. Maybe the youth does affect Michigan. I just think that Don Brown's going to have some scheme cocked up, and you're not going to have... I mean, you had Zaire from Notre Dame who was good in spots, but he's never been terribly accurate. I think Don Brown's going to do enough to confuse him with the young Michigan defense that they still get the win. What do you think, Matt?
I think it's pretty much since Urban Meyer's left, Florida's forgot to pack their offense with them. It's just been one letdown after another for Florida, which has kind of been nice after dealing with Tebow for those years. That Florida State clearly has an upper hand, and I don't foresee in the near future them giving that up. As long as Florida continues to recruit terribly like they have been and just missing on recruit after recruit, they don't have the talent, and then it definitely transfers to the games. And I fell asleep because it should just be a 63-10 beatdown.
Rick, what do you think?
Like you said, Vegas is giving the odds to Michigan. It's 3.5. Currently, it's standing at. And I mean, I will say this. This is a fact. Florida Gators have won 27 straight opening games, but they haven't played teams like a Michigan or teams that are highly ranked. I think that, and they're going to a neutral site. It's not like they're playing some Division, 2 school here, just get an easy cupcake win and start the year off. So I'm still going to favor Michigan, even though I don't want to, Rich, and let your ego about Michigan. But I think that they're going to win. I don't see how youth is not a problem sometimes. Sometimes it's helping you out. A lot of players went to the draft, and Harbaugh knows how to recruit. I'll give him that credit. He did it at Stanford, and he's doing it so far at Michigan. So I think this is a Michigan game, and Vegas is obviously agreeing with us.
And like you said, it's talent. It's young talent. If they end up dropping it, I don't think it will hurt the season in the grand scheme of things. But this game's going to be really telling on where Harbaugh has these guys. Is he going to have them ready to go? The defensive line has a chance to be very scary. And the fact that Florida is going to be rotating possibly 3 quarterbacks, it just makes me think Michigan's going to have the edge. And they might even have Spate starting at quarterback, who has quality looks in big games. He led the comeback against Florida State, fell a little bit short, but he's been in high pressure moments. Had him in the game against Ohio State, went to overtime last year. I think the 3 losses were only by 5 total points last year, something crazy like that. So that if Spate can just control the ball, not have any turnovers against Florida, if he is the starter, I'm not sure. Harbaugh said he'll let people know on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. So if you hear this on the audio, he might have already made that decision. But we're going to move on to the biggest
hold
game.
on, real quick. What the hell is Harbaugh doing with his depth chart? He's not releasing anything with his roster. Did you see any of this?
Yeah, that's what I said. He's releasing it tomorrow.
They're trying to petition people, and he's like, well, just give us a list of the people that are currently on your team. And he's just being like such a jerk about it. It's like, we don't have anyone. We're still in the process of evaluating our tryout.
Yeah, but I will say this. The people that were doing that were New Jersey guys. And these are the same guys that are around Rutgers. They want to see, okay, which one of our guys made the team. I know Rutgers were getting people to transfer who dropped out of Michigan. I think one of our receivers actually, I could be wrong, but I think one of the Michigan guys left the team and Rutgers got him to transfer back. So I think maybe that's what Harbaugh's thinking here. And I actually think it's funny because Rutgers poked the bear last year and what happened? It was an annihilation. If they keep poking the bear like this and then leaking the stuff to the media, when it comes from the New Jersey news outlets, who the hell else is leaking this? It has to be something connected to Rutgers. And I'm just going to laugh whenever Harbaugh, he doesn't take the foot off the gas this year. What was that? I don't think he won't ever pass that Georgia. Was it Georgia Tech that had 220 points in a game? But he might go for 85 points this year. And so just keep it. You might want to watch your back there, New Jersey, if that's what you're trying to do, because I'm just going to laugh because that's not going to get you any of our old players, and it's not going to get Harbaugh to respect you, and he's not going to release the roster. If you remember last year, he didn't release rosters anyway because Colorado made a big stink about it because they wanted to know who was our starting quarterback or something. If the NCAA doesn't require it, he's not going to do it. He's always pushing boundaries. That's just the way he is. But we'll go ahead and segue now into the biggest matchup of the weekend. I talked to an Alabama friend of mine the other day. He thinks that if Florida State wins, it's going to be on the strength of their ground game against the Alabama defense. Lost too many on defense. He wouldn't be surprised if they dropped them. We ran our poll again for this game, and it's looking like another handful of people voted 100% Alabama. I want to say that they had the line at 7, which shocked me. Because Alabama, did lose a bunch of guys. And Florida State, I want to say they're returning most. Yeah, they lose Dalvin Cook. But overall, I mean, when you have a starting quarterback who wins the Orange Bowl, coming back, played a bunch of great games. I mean, the Louisville is the only game that really stood out to me last year where they didn't look like their heads were in it. I think they can play with anyone. And I think I'm going to actually go with the upset this year. And I'm going to pick Florida State to start this out. And I know I shouldn't because Alabama, you should just pick Alabama just because until they lose, got to go with them. But I think Alabama's usually do one loss a year, and I don't see it coming from the SEC this year. So I have a feeling they're going to drop this Florida State game, run the table, and they're going to be back in the playoffs. We'll save you for last, Matt, because I know you're a Florida State guy. Go ahead, Rick. What are your thoughts?
The odds makers are putting it at 7.5 right now. So
crazy.
But Alabama's one of those teams you'd kind of dope bet against, and that Nick Saban pretty much has any Alabama player who didn't make in the NFL is now pretty much on a practice squad type thing. So they're practicing against NFL talent a lot of these times. So, but I kind of want to see Florida State win. I want to see Alabama put a little bit back on awareness and not their cocky selves that nobody's going to beat us and we're going to beat our chest how great we are and nobody can beat us and we're going to run up every score. If we play Stony Brook, we're going to put 85 points on the board and and keep running up the score. So I think it's going to actually be a good game, a tough game. And I think this is going to be a game where offense prevails. And I think if offense prevails, Florida State wins. If defense prevails, I think Alabama may have a chance there just because their rotation and depth that they have.
Matt, what are your thoughts? I was getting scared there, Rick. You're going to pick Florida State. We can't all pick Florida State. Otherwise, I would have had to change mine. I only did that because I was talking to a Bama guy who thinks that they're going to lose. I got to go with the insider's pick.
Well,
go ahead, Matt.
I think if this game's won, it's going to have to be won through the air. I think Alabama's lost a lot of their secondary to the draft, and I think with having a season DeAndre Francois having a consistent offensive line. I think that's one of the things that you haven't seen, over the last couple of years since that 2013 national championship run is consistency on the offensive line. So if they're able to keep Francois upright and not let him get decked like they did last year, having Naquan Murray back and having Auden Tate, who's a big target downfield, I think that could be a deciding factor in this game. Florida State's ability to push the ball downfield could then open up running lanes. They were able to sign two really good younger freshmen to the last year's recruiting class. They signed the top running back. I think that helps contribute. He may not get the start. I think Jacques Patrick's going to do that, but they'll definitely be splitting the ball and sharing time and having the best playmakers making the plays. I think the one thing that could hurt them is they've struggled in the past with mobile quarterbacks. I think this game, I give the edge to Florida State in it just because they're not going to have Derwin James banged up, and Derwin James is going to be the X factor for Florida State's defense, being able to shadow Jalen Hurts and take away the running threat that when they played Louisville last year, that was the game that right before he got injured and wasn't able to play. So I think that really messed with their ability to come up with a consistent game plan, because I think going in, it was Derwin James was going to bail them out of trouble, and then with him being out as the vocal leader and physical leader of that defense, having him really just threw things into disarray for the defense and led to that embarrassing loss.
Wow, funny how you mentioned that one all-star great player missing the game made a difference.
Oh, please.
That rings a bell to me in the Orange Bowl when Peppers was out.
W's and L's.
Well, let's go with this. ESPN and a lot of the other mainstream media are picking, of course, Alabama. I have seen some of the storylines come out where they're saying if Florida State wins, they think that Alabama still deserves to be in even if they pick up another loss in the SEC. Let's say a two-loss Alabama to Florida State and maybe Ole Miss or someone. Do you think they have a realistic shot of making the playoffs this year? Because up to this point, no two-loss team has ever made it in. Matt?
Never say never. I think it would depend on when the loss happened and what happens in some of the other games. I mean, I think do you let a two-loss Alabama in with the rest of the field having one loss? I mean, there's been crazier things that have happened. And when you lose at the right, if you lose early enough in the year, even with Florida State, if they happen to lose this game, it doesn't knock them out of their chances, but it definitely makes things a lot tighter. I think it puts more pressure on the conference games and making sure that you win out and winning your conference so that you have at least that extra notch in your belt that maybe you had the early season loss, but it was to a quality opponent and you didn't lose to, a Division II or a FCS school. So I think you could find a two-loss team back in their way in, but I definitely think the odds are against you given how some of these other schools, especially the Big 12 schools or some of the Pac-10, they're not scheduling tougher out-of-conference opponents, running the table, and aligning themselves in a position where if they win their conference, they have a chance to make the claim to be in the playoff.
Rick, what do you think? Because Penn State was in that position last year, almost made it in. Some think they deserved it, especially after how Ohio State performed. Do you think they should get the nod? I mean, I guess it depends on a lot of other things too, but what are your thoughts?
I would say it depends upon two factors. How big of the losses were they? Were they blowouts or were they close? Let's say Florida State beats them by a field goal. So that's only 3 points at the beginning of the year. They lose one other game by a field goal. You only lost by 6 points in 2 games. So that's one thing to factor in. But I think the thing that's going to affect it, and affects it every year, is the quality of the rest of the college football teams. Think about it this way. Okay. You can have Michigan beats Penn State. Penn State beats Ohio State. Ohio State beats Michigan. Let's say that's their only loss between those 3 teams. So they're all one-loss teams, and they're all top 10 teams. Those 3 deserved a shot more than Alabama just because one compared to 2 losses. I mean, you could have a team like Florida State if they beat the Alabama, they run the rest of the year out. There are no losses, and then you have those 3 from the Big Ten that are all sitting there, all at 1 loss, and then you have Alabama with 2. I think you would create a tough problem, and people would even complain more about a playoff football system and say, okay, we're putting Alabama in, but Ohio State, you didn't win by big enough points. Penn State and Michigan, you did, so we're going to put you in. Ohio State, you get left to the curb. We're going to move Alabama in because they blew out their opponent. So I don't think you could do it, and I think if you do that, I think now you're going to have all these college football people saying, no, it shouldn't be 4 teams. Now it should be 8 teams or something like that. I don't think you could do it with a 2-loss team. I think there's going to be somehow some combination of between no-loss teams and 1-loss teams that there's going to be somehow 4 teams in there that beat out a 2-loss team.
Yeah, and we'll go through, do final thoughts. My final thought will be a build off of that. Like Matt said, excuse me, it's going to go down to the conferences that are scheduling tough out of conference. There's a good chance when you have Clemson playing, I think, Auburn this year, Florida State playing Alabama, then you have Michigan playing Florida, and Ohio State playing Oklahoma. What if Ohio State and Michigan both win? There's a chance Florida could once again be in the SEC East championship game. Even if they would upset Alabama, you'd have to make a pretty hard case to put a team like that in that lost. It's happened to Oklahoma in the past where the Big 12 has been left out. And by not scheduling, you don't have these other conferences that have that resume. There's a chance where the Big Ten could be looking at 2 teams getting in Ohio State and Michigan. You also throw in Penn State there. And then you have the ACC. What if Virginia Tech beats West Virginia, Florida State beats Alabama, and Clemson beats Auburn? That pretty much eliminates it. Will, even if you throw in Michigan beating Florida, that pretty much eliminates any 2-team talk from SEC. If they beat each other up, do they deserve to be in when all 3 of their top programs lost in these big non-conference games? I don't know. So it's going to be very telling these first couple weeks what happens in these big primetime matchups. Because if all 3 teams from the SEC fall, not saying that they are going to, but it could happen, and then you're looking at a debate, do they even deserve to have a team in? So that's my final thoughts. We'll go ahead around. Matt, what are your final thoughts?
Go Noles. I hope Jimbo got the boys ready. Come out guns a-blazing. Let's take down Alabama and take our rightful place at the top of the college football polls.
Rick, what about you?
I think it should be a half-decent weekend with some of these games out here. But I think if you're having sleep problems, I recommend the Penn State-Akron game in the 4th quarter. There's also the Washington-Rutgers game and Ohio State-Indiana. That should all put you to sleep in that 4th quarter. So I recommend, if you're having sleep problems, I recommend those games. And
that Ohio State-Indiana game is a Thursday night game. So you'll be well rested for work going into Friday. But that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, listening to the Southbound Sports Show. And follow us on Twitter, like the show, tell your friends, follow us on Facebook, like our page, and we will see you next week.